Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this panel, which is on everyone's favorite topic, love and love stories, and is also the title of a great song, by the way. We have some very esteemed panelists with us today who are at different stages of their careers and have written about love in very different ways, so I'm sure it'll be a super interesting panel. So let's jump right into it. Sayantan, I'd like to start with you if you're ready.
Sure.
Could you tell us a little bit about your focus on urban loneliness and urban wandering, which is what you've explored in your debut novel, Lonely People Meet? What is it that inspired and ignited your interest in these topics?
Thank you, Aishwarya, for the question, and thank you all of you for being here. It started as when I moved to Delhi for the first time. It was about 13 years ago. I was fairly young, and I didn't know a lot of people there. I had a couple of friends, but everyone was busy settling up in their own careers. So I was trying to figure out the city by myself, and hence loitering and wandering around the city became a big part of my refuge. So I think that's where, but it also, that sense of extreme isolation also creeped in, because it was also technically not, but for the first time I was living outside my home in such a big place. I came from Calcutta, which is a big city itself, but Delhi is a different behemoth altogether. And I think that's where the idea, started. That, yeah, and I thought it's something that other people, at least around me, were also able to connect with. We were always conversing about it, especially people who had moved from other cities and gone to another place to make a career or start a new life. So yeah.
So you feel that there's a difference between urban wandering and rural wandering? I'm asking because these are terms that one doesn't come across every day. So what is the difference?
Unfortunately, I've not lived in rural areas, but I've done a lot of rural wandering whenever I've had the opportunity. But I think what happens in big cities is that because you see everything around you, there's so much glitz, people are always busy, the city is always alive. That makes you, I think, feel more isolated than it would in a slightly more laid back place. Like I said, I grew up in the 90s Calcutta, where it was far more laid back than even it is now there. Delhi is, of course, completely different, or the other cities I go to, for instance, Bombay. But I was used to that. I'm very interested in slowness, but life today doesn't allow you that. So the bigger the city, I think, the less allowance you have for that slowness. And that's something that differentiates, I think, urban isolation and rural isolation.
No, that's really interesting. And Prajwal, in your latest novel, You Can't Be Serious, you deal with the famous or infamous North-South divide that many love stories have been pivoted on. So why did you choose this particular trope? And why did you feel that it was so compelling that you had to use this in this novel of yours?
Thank you, Aishwarya, and welcome everyone. Thank you for attending this panel. For me, what really got me is the sheer complexity of it, the North-South dynamic. It's really compelling, and more so today with social media being the loudest voice in your ear, and it keeps coming up, and you keep seeing so many of that, of the North-South tropes playing out everywhere. But my debut, not my debut novel, my latest novel, You Can't Be Serious, is more than just a North-South. It is also a clash of two different worlds. Vedvi Rathore Singh, is a prince, a North Indian prince. She, Aditya Asha Pratap, is a very successful entrepreneur and also the daughter of a senior politician. So it's more than just the North and South. It is a clash of cultures and tradition and just everything. And I thought that it was so intriguing, and I was really wondering and thinking through this as I wrote this plot. I wanted to see how it would play out in the characters, their lives, and how they took it forward. Because as complex as it is, you can't but believe that this has got to coexist beautifully together, and that really what drove me to write this.
So did it come as a surprise to you also, how it played out in the novel, or did you always know exactly how it was going to turn out?
No, not really, because I've lived most of my life in Bangalore. This is the world I know, the only world I really know. And always, North India was this dazzling piece of, was something that was not really home, but something that was always intrigued by. So it was not. So I did wonder whether they could coexist, but it did actually. It did really, really. It's come out really well. They go hand in hand, and like it should in a rom-com.
I'm sure, and I'm sure everyone will be very excited to read about that in your novel. Milan, your new book, Heartbreak Unfiltered, it's your first foray into non-fiction. And as the title suggests, it deals with stories of loss, and love and loss, basically. And this is quite different from a lot of the kinds of novels that you've written before, and a lot of different love stories and different things that you've written. So can you tell us what made you turn in this new direction, and can you tell us a little bit about where the book came from?
Thank you, Aishwarya. Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you, Aishwarya. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm so proud of the city. Honestly, I just love the fact that everyone's chosen to come to a Lit Fest on a Sunday. Really, I just feel very proud of calling this my city. So I think, I started with writing romance 15 years ago, and for the last 15 years, I've done rom-coms. They were very well received. One got acquired for a film as well, and so on. But one of the things that I noticed that kept happening always, I had the fortune of being invited to speak, every time there was a new book, especially. And I found that the questions that would come up, like even here after we finish, there are likely to be a few questions. It will be about romance or whatever, but it would never be personal. And the real questions would begin the moment I would leave the venue. There would be people, wanting to get a one-on-one. And if the fact that I wrote romance somehow compelled people to tell me about their stories, and their stories were never just about the glossy part of love. It was about the highs and lows, and what went into it, what stopped them from falling in love again, what made them lose trust in another human being or in themselves and their ability to judge. And this was something that happened again and again and again. I would speak at an engineering college, there would be a hall full of people, and the questions would still be sort of on the surface. And the moment you left, and again, I think it also comes from the fact that I'm a terribly friendly person. So after any flight, bus journey, train journey, I pretty much know the stories of everybody around me. I think it also comes from the fact that I'm also okay with sharing what I feel and sharing part of my life, which encourages the other person also. And so I really felt very privileged that I had this coming to me. And so these stories just started collecting. And in the last 10 years, when the stories started collecting, initially I was just collecting them, thinking maybe I'll just write a book which is an anthology with these stories. And I also questioned what is in these stories that a person can't find on the internet. And the fact is that these stories they get so close. You get to see a relationship in a way that you would not see out on any public space. You would get to know how a person met, how the relationship developed, how it unfolded, how it fell apart, and then what. That's really the most important part. What happened to that person, which is why I say that the book took me 10 years, because it's kind of following up with the people, with the stories, and it also led me to keep questioning things that came up, which I knew nothing about. 10 years ago, I had just heard of narcissism, I'd heard of narcissistic type personalities, I'd heard of attachment styles, so it kept me going on, diving in, talking to experts, and so it evolved into 3 different sort of things that the book offers you, and stories is just one part of that.
Well, I think we all know that in real life, love is rarely ever glossy. It's rarely ever as perfect as we would like it to be. Sayantan, in Lonely People Meet, it's not a typical love story. It blurs the lines between real and imaginary, between love and danger. Was this a conscious choice on your part? And do you feel that love is inevitably tainted by other elements, and that perhaps the era for those love stories which had a certain innocence and earnestness to them, that era has passed us by?
I'm going to unleash the pessimist in me right now.
That's what I've been waiting for.
No, I mean, for sure, I mean, that's what, when we hear about the stories of our parents or our grandparents, I think the times were simpler. I don't know if it was less complicated. I'm sure they had their own share of complications. It's just that there were different sets of complications. For us, of course, we are a generation that's ruined by technological choice, right? We have everything at our disposal. It's just right here. So it's so easy to switch between what you rightly said, love and danger, they go hand in hand now, because you never know what you're going to land up into. And I think that's where the story also, my story also, takes off from there, because sometimes you can't predict what's in store. And it can take you to very unexpected roads. So yeah. So
That was a conscious choice that you wanted to portray this kind of love story or get this message across.
yeah, I think I wanted it to. Of course, it's set in a slightly, if you read it, it's a slightly speculative sort of space. But why I wanted to explore it in the speculative space is because unlike the dystopian fiction or the speculative fiction that I grew up reading, where I was talking about it yesterday also, where we were exposed to a world that's very dramatically different from the world we see around us. Like I, at the cost of repeating myself, I'll quickly say that this book, one of the seminal books in my life when I started thinking about this, is a book called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick, which later became an incredible film called Blade Runner, the first one, which came out in 1982. And it's one of my favorite films of all time. And in 2019, I was rewatching that film. And of course, if any of you have seen the film, you know that there are cars flying, the rich people have moved to Mars, and it's an LA which is completely, gone to the dust. It doesn't look like our world, except the elements that are there, the extreme dependence on technology, the lack of, human empathy, the class divide, all of that is present around us. And what struck me most is that film, in the movie, is set in the year 2018. So of course, and I was watching it in 2019, and of course the world didn't look like that, except the elements within it were already present around us, which is more sinister. And I thought that, of course that book deals with something completely different, but I thought that sinister element is of course, somehow percolating down into our relationships as well, and how we are looking for not just love, but any form of human connection, and real human connection, an authentic human connection. That's why I thought
And it's ironic that now we're turning to AI for that authentic human connection. But that's a different conversation altogether. Prajwal, as a North Indian visiting Bangalore, one can't help but recall the many social media controversies regarding language over here. And there's always a small part of you that kind of wonders, am I being judged for not being able to speak the language? Is there going to be some problem because of this or something like that? So do you feel that that is a genuine issue, or is it something that's just been exaggerated on social media, as so many things are?
It's not a genuine issue, Aishwarya. This I will say this about the city. It's always, everything is sort of amplified on social media. It's just 1% voice that is probably the loudest that you hear the most. And but that said, I would say that not just Bangalore or anywhere else in this country or in many parts of the world, but language is a two-way street, and many people are protective of it, and they identify because of their language. And I think that's no different down here in Bangalore. And if there is even the smallest effort to try and understand it or try and speak even one word of it, I think there is a lot of acceptance, and there is a lot of, it is just when I feel when the locals feel they're completely overridden by something, by another voice, another language, that is when they stand up to it. And most times you would see most Bangaloreans will, or people from Karnataka will switch to many languages, even if we know very little of it. My Hindi is bare, it's really bare, but I would try and speak Hindi to you or to Sayantan or Milan. But yeah, or speak Tamil or speak some other language that would help somebody else understand. But it is important to us. And You Can't Be Serious, Aditya, the protagonist, gets really irritated with the prince because he cannot pronounce her name like it should be pronounced. And she speaks pretty much through the book, and always like, is he going to say it right now? or, or not. So yeah, language is important to us.
It's really funny because yesterday I was with a couple of friends of mine, and my friend who's from North India, he's married to a girl from Bangalore. And I was in the car with them, and we were talking about this whole language issue. And she was saying that whenever they get pulled over by cops, she always tells them, Ishan, don't speak in Hindi. Don't speak to the cop in Hindi, because then we're really going to be in trouble. Otherwise, it's fine. Milan, so the stories in Heartbreak Unfiltered are written in first person, even though these are stories of other people whom you've met and interviewed and spent time with. So why did you choose this point of view to write the stories? And did you feel that writing in first person presented certain challenges in terms of translating the emotions and traumas of these people?
No, to the contrary, I think that what a first-person narrative does, it lets you get really close. It makes you feel as if you're hearing it from the person, where the moment I had done it in the third person, I've distanced you from that story. And for me, for example, there are stories which, like I said, the stories go across countries, across age groups. So the voice of each person, it is very important for me to capture that. For example, there's a story of a person, a farmer in Punjab. And that's a queer story where he talks about going to a mela and he meets this person who is 55 years old, a man, who strikes up a conversation. And even when I was getting the story, our conversation began with, Milan ji, aap Punjabi samajhte ho, aap Punjabi baat karte ho. So I said, main baat nahi karti hu, main samajhti hu. I've grown up in Delhi, so I do understand it. And I said, I speak Hindi, but anyway, I was also recording the sessions. I'll come back to you with anything that I don't get. And the way he speaks, the meter, the whole rhythm of a person's speech. It's the first, level one that you learn of dialogue writing, that you want to get that cadence right. So first person lets me do that, and it was also a great challenge when we were working with the editors, for them to also understand that a story which is from a person who studied at Brown and who was always having this very, all the good schools and, lived in UK, lived in US, and the story is going across the world. Her voice is going to be very different from that guy who is in Punjab, and it's also going to be very different from somebody who grew up in Kanpur with a lot of family pressure to write the entrance exams, and then what happened to him at management school. So first person was just almost like a no-brainer for me. I will go with that.
Yes, I think as writers, we always have to be so mindful of this, that you have to make sure that every character doesn't sound like yourself, which is something that's very easy to do. Sayantan, as we've also just touched upon, we know that technology has fundamentally altered all aspects of our life, including, of course, love and relationships. And with the proliferation of dating apps, there are conflicting opinions over whether this has added to the convenience factor, it has opened up the world, it has given people more options, or has it sort of made everything, it's sort of destroyed the essence of love, because now it's just about, you swipe left or you swipe right, and then you have situationships and you have this, and it's so easy to ghost someone. So what is your take on this? Do you feel that technology has helped people have better relationships, or is it something that has hindered that?
I don't have a lot of personal experience with dating apps, but what I see around me, and I don't want to be all negative about it, because I know it has its benefits, because I've seen friends around me, meet people through dating apps, and they've struck a great relationship, even if it didn't last forever. What does? But I don't look at technology's involvement in relationship particularly as a negative aspect. It's fine. I mean, people don't meet in bookstores and DVD libraries anymore. So
sadly.
Yeah, sadly. But it's what it is. And for my younger cousins who never saw a DVD library in their life, for them this is how it is. This is the norm. So we can't deny that norm to them. I understand the complexities that come with it, because it's very easy to delete someone or ghost someone or things like that. But it's the nature of the beast. I mean, you have to accept that it's like taking on that long list of guidelines which whenever we are downloading an app, they give us, which we never read.
Right.
So it's relationships don't come with that, but we are taking on it constantly. So you have to, I guess, with its downsides. But I'm sure there are good sides to it. I'm sure there are some decent people on it. I'm sure.
We can hope. Prajwal, your novel takes this trope of royalty and kind of turns it on its head. Because here the girl doesn't want to become a princess. She's the anti-Meghan Markle in many ways. Um, was this a conscious choice on your part? Did you want to subvert this concept and create a female character who was more focused on her own agency and her own identity rather than just stepping into a ready-made tiara?
Strangely, Aishwarya, it was not so much that trope that I was looking to turn over. It was more. Aditya was always a really hardworking, grounded person who had this really successful business, who wanted to succeed in what she was doing. She could have been content with being a rich father's daughter, but she's not a rich father's daughter. And the princess thing only came to prop up the other end, because it's not her world at all. Her world is completely different from that, and so that really got me thinking on how and where I could take this plot in the way that it is. In the way that it is today, the way young people live their lives today, they're more in their own direction than wanting to be something and then claim they don't want to be something. So yeah, so I don't think it had anything to do with her and royalty. Was just a really incidental part of You Can't Be Serious.
That's really interesting, yeah. Because usually one would think it would be the whole focus of it, but it's really interesting that you've changed that. Milan, 20 real stories from around the world. You mentioned this story from this farmer from Punjab, and there's so many different kinds of stories. So how did these stories find you, or how did you find them?
I think that would be like a whole, I could do a podcast on that and it wouldn't be enough. But it's amazing how sometimes stories just literally just come to you. I'll give one example, and that is like one of the things I should say is that, unlike other anthologies which are based on true stories, let's say Spa Women or something, they would join you on the stage, they would be willing to talk about them. But here, when it's heartbreak, even though I would say that the most of the stories, and it would be unreal if everybody had made a complete sort of a turnaround and all that, in most of the stories, the heartbreak has been a catalyst. It has shaped them in some way or the other, and led to some newer, better. I mean, it sounds very glib to say it like this, but it has led to a different sort of a turn in life for them. But I promised anonymity to everybody who gave me their stories, simply because heartbreak does involve a lot of internalizing of guilt and shame and humiliation and the whole lot of unanswered questions that it leaves you with. And that is regardless of whether you had a situationship, whether you had a relationship which was a distance one, whether it was really short, when you're left with unanswered questions, or even the fact that you didn't see it coming, even if it was a marriage you chose to get into, so that anonymity is a very important thing. But there are a few stories where, in fact, the people said, I'm fine if you want to talk about it. And, so I'll give you an example of one which was right here in our city. I was walking to one of my favorite cafes, and I saw this very young, slender guy, and he was holding, those boards that are from the ground up to his waist level. And it said, need a hug? Going through any problems? Come and hug me. And it had just started to rain, and I went, and I had some stuff going on, and it was such a spontaneous thing. I went and we hugged for a pretty long sort of couple of minutes, and then I said, I just stood there watching other people coming and the way he was interacting with everyone. And so again I went, had my coffee, came back, it had started to drizzle, and he was still there. And I said, I'm writing this book, and I'd really love to know what brought you to this place, and you're standing on the street giving hugs. That's a story that later I went on to call Hugs for Free in the book. And it's a story where, like I said, he told me about how he used to be bullied majorly in school. So all his relationships were also colored by that. And it was sort of that whole repeating of patterns and everything and so on. And so for somebody like that to come such a long way to now be standing out there helping other people with their mental health, and he's doing this. So that was one story that came to me. Another time I was in Heidelberg and I was at a cafe. It had, it was we were on the outside area of the cafe, and I was taking a story from a student who was had studied at Shanti Niketan and was studying in Germany. And it was again, a lot of these stories were collected by word of mouth, going on, asking, saying, please, if somebody is willing to share, tell me, I will protect all the details. And I was listening to her, taking her story. A couple of hours had passed, actually, maybe 2 hours. And I saw this man who was perhaps about 60, you couldn't tell, a German guy. It looked like whatever. It looked like a white person. I couldn't tell where he belonged. And I saw him coming in with overalls, paint spattered over his clothes, and he was carrying a ladder. And he came and sat behind us. It was already starting to rain, so everybody was crowded into that area. And he was just smoking non-stop, like a huge pile had built up. And when the person I was speaking with went in to pick up her coffees, and he said, I couldn't help but overhear what you were talking about. I said, yeah, I'm working on this book on heartbreak, and I'm collecting stories, and that's what it was about. He said, I said, why do you have one? Because it was almost, it felt like he wanted to contribute. He said, oh, sure, I could give you a story. I could give you 3 chapters of my life story. I said, well, right now I'm with this person. I can't, if you want, we can meet another day. And he said, no, this is my only day off. I don't mind waiting. He waited another 3 hours for us to spend another 3 hours for me to take that story. And, by the end of it, I was crying, he was crying, and we were hugging. And I felt that, I think for me, the most important takeaway in collecting these stories and writing this book has been not just to say that you're not alone. When you read the book, you're not going to say, I'm not alone. And the fact that there is hope, because if these people could get through it, so can you. You will read that in the book. But the biggest thing for me that day when I was hugging this man was that there is this invisible thread of caring for other human beings, which somewhere or the other, we don't realize we do. When you say somebody's an empath, it's actually being able to feel both their highs and their lows. And I think that thread that connects us of caring actually on a very, very human level across genders, across everything, that is what collecting these stories gave to me, and I hope it'll give all of you as well.
I think that people always want to share their stories, and that's something that one always finds wherever you go. Everybody has a story that they want to share, and as writers, that's the greatest gift, because that's what inspires us always.
I should jump in and just say, why don't you talk about your book too? You're here moderating. You must talk about.
I don't think we have enough time for that, unfortunately. Just one last question for each of you. One last question. Sayantan, I always feel that setting is a very critical part of any story. And as Milan mentioned, my book is set in Delhi, my novel, and because I grew up there. So why did you choose to set your novel in Delhi? Why didn't you set it in Calcutta, for instance, where you grew up? What was it that you found so compelling about the city?
Yeah, I'll quickly answer that. There's a very old Chinese proverb, which I'm very fond of, that every cup has its own lid. And in Calcutta, I was the right fit. And when I moved to Delhi, I think I was too small a lid and the cup was too big. So I fell right in. So that's what happened. Delhi, I had come to Delhi. I used to visit Delhi as a kid for vacations to a cousin's place. But that was just going to McDonald's. It wasn't living in the city. But when I moved here and started living on my own with very little money, it became a different ball game altogether. Which is why I experienced the city at a much more cerebral level than I had experienced Calcutta, because Calcutta was always a place of shelter for me. I still love Calcutta to death, but it's always that place of refuge, that place of security. Delhi didn't offer me that, and I'm thankful for that as well, because I had to learn things on my own and to figure it out, because there was no one else to figure it out for me. My parents went there, as they shouldn't have been. At 25, it would have been odd if they were figuring it out. But those initial years were very, foundational in whoever I became. But which is why when I started writing this story, which was about our urban isolation, automatically Delhi became. I mean, there are a couple of detours into a few other cities in the book, but largely it is a Delhi book, because there were places in Delhi, especially Delhi. One of the great things about the city is the accessibility of free public parks and public spaces. And I work in publishing. I was thrown out of my 2 jobs in my career. And then I was unemployed for 2 months each time. Lovely, lovely time. But very little money.
Highly recommended, unemployment.
Yes, but I had nothing to do and I had no money to spend. So the public parks became my only refuge. I used to go there and sleep every afternoon. I knew all the gardeners. It was wonderful. So that connection was very organic for me and Delhi. I don't advise others to get unemployed to experience that. But in my case, that happened. So which is why when I started writing it, it automatically Delhi, I mean, I didn't have to do it. It was automatically there. I couldn't think of it anywhere else because I didn't know any other city as intrinsically as I think I know Delhi now. Because every large city can be, it's like that line from Anna Karenina. Every large city is lonely, but every large city is lonely in its own way.
Yes, that's very true. I like Delhi stories. Prajwal, just a fun question. You know, a lot of people say that the era of rom-coms is over. I myself have said this on many occasions, that you know, all the classics that we enjoyed, like Notting Hill or When Harry Met Sally, or the later favorites, whether it was Love Actually or The Holiday, that they just don't make those sweet, charming kind of rom-coms anymore. Do you agree, or do you feel that rom-coms are making a comeback? What's your view on it?
Aishwarya, you sent me these questions obviously, and I planned this answer because I don't think love has left the building. So, and I'm a great believer in romance, and much to the dismay of my friends and maybe even family, but I believe romance is eternal. And yes, so I have jotted down a few points, and I'm a better writer than I am a speaker, so I'm just going to read out this answer. Yeah, romance never left the building and can never be outdated. It is the only genre that positions joy as a centerfold emotion in writing. I think one has seen it evolve and evolve depending on which side of the age spectrum people find themselves in. Surely the warmth of Nora Ephron, you know those great movies. You've Got Mail is my favorite, and one of the titles in my chapter is You've Got Mail. In my book is You've Got Mail. So I don't think we've lost touch with that style of storytelling per se, but what now changes is that we add our own cultural nuances, our own cultural details into that, and I think it is still evolving at a time when, you know, the noise of social media and everything else. And of course, it doesn't help when you have these ridiculously over-the-top plots and stuff like that. But yeah, it has not left the building.
I'm very relieved to hear that, personally. Milan, there's so many stories that you've included, so many people that you've interviewed. Is there any one particular one that stood out to you the most, or maybe something that you couldn't include?
No, I really couldn't pick one because all of them depicted different aspects of heartbreak, and so, you know, you can't measure one against the other. For example, there are stories which are looking at friends turning to lovers and the angst and something like that, where if the relationship falls apart, you have lost not just a friend, but you've also lost that lover. You know, so there is a double sort of a loss there. Now, how can I compare that, let's say, with somebody like the farmer story that I mentioned? You know, we talk about modern terms like gaslighting, and I was struck by that story where this was a man who had no access to any digital platforms. But when he had a relationship with this older man, it was a full-on relationship. It lasted about 7 years. They were traveling together a lot. The other man had a wife and children. And then suddenly he has enough of him, and he says, I've got cancer, and he pretty much vanishes. Now that's ghosting. And all of these things, we talk about it as if they're modern day phenomena. They're not. They've been happening forever. And so the stories reflect that. And there are also chapters which are talking you through all of it. And I'd have to agree with Prajwal that I think we're all writers. You know, we're forced to be here and, you know, talk about our books in the hope that, you know, we can interest somebody. And in my case, I also always hope that if there is somebody who's going through heartbreak, you know, you hope that the right book reaches the right person when they need it. We just don't know when somebody does need it. So I would also, actually, I would much rather read a bit from the book to
Sure, I think we have
sort of
only a couple of
illustrate.
minutes left, so just
Yeah,
a little.
I do that. I'll give you an example. I was at JLF many years ago, And I remember listening to a lot of authors, and I'm not the kind of person who goes crazy buying 20,000 books and, hauling it all back by flight. But I remember listening to Howard Jacobson, who had, a few years ago won the Finkler question. And when he read just those 2 paragraphs, it was such a poignant section, about he just lost his wife. He's sitting with somebody, he's gone on a date, and he's wishing that he could have been with that wife to sit there and laugh at what happened at that date. And that writing expresses it better than anything I'm saying or anything he might have talked about or whatever. So I'd much rather read
let's
something.
Hear.
Yes. So, like we said, we've talked a lot about the stories, but the book also has about 14 chapters and exercises to take the person who's gone through heartbreak to make them get an understanding of what happened and where do you go from there. So it's everything you need to get over the ex and then get on with your life. Okay, and this is the part which is talking about what hurts is that you had no choice and no voice in the way it ended. The powerlessness it leaves you with is the first point I'd like you to consider. So you went all in. You held nothing back. You gave the person your heart fully. And slowly you gave them all the power you had in the relationship. Now you may well say, Milan, this is how I love. I don't like to hold back or play games when I love someone. Let's talk about the power you handed away on a platter. I'm reminded of a conversation that happened a long time ago in my first job. In those days, people didn't think twice before asking personal questions. My boss, known to be quite the Casanova and an intelligent man, asked me for the nth time. So you already have a boyfriend? Yes, I answered patiently with an eye roll. Mr. IIT, IM, and the copy chief of the ad agency then asked me, a young copy cub of, I was about 22, 23, who has all the power in the relationship? Huh? I blinked, never having thought of anything like that. You guys fight yet? He continued. I shrugged. The unspoken answer was, of course, who doesn't? And who tends to do the making up? He persisted. Me, I said. Mostly or always? He asked, eyebrows raised. Always, I grimaced. It was the truth. Not a truth I liked, but it was what it was. I couldn't bear the idea of holding on to a fight and always caved in first. My boss, the proud player, and Mr. Know-it-all shook his head. Ha, he snorted. Your boyfriend already holds all the cards, darling, he declared. I thought that idea was ridiculous. Who talks of a real relationship that had already lasted a few years in terms of holding the cards? Ugh, that felt manipulative. At the time, I looked at it as typical of my boss and his distorted view of relationships, or their lack thereof. But later I thought, who filled our head with these notions of love comes first and park your ego when it comes to love? Over time, I realized his observations didn't seem so off base. I'm not suggesting we become dogmatic about every agreement, but what if, for a change, instead of being the one to always bend and adjust, what if sometimes we honor ourselves and see if he or she also tries to see our point of view, to come around to doing something that matters to us? That's what I mean when I say, hold on to your power.
Lovely. I don't know if we have time for a couple of questions. Audience questions? Yeah? Just one or two quick ones. Do we have a mic?
Hi, Mr. Ghosh. My question is for you. So, when you moved from Calcutta to Delhi, what made you stay going, living there? You probably must have had hard times. So, what made you? What was the framework through which you were able to understand? Okay, being in Delhi for me right now is the right way, and not going back.
I was broke. I had no money. That's the only job. I went to Delhi to look for a job. I found a job. I had to keep it. My parents wouldn't have me back. There's no better answer. I wanted a job in publishing. I've been working in publishing for the last 13 years now, and I really wanted to work. I tried a couple of other careers before, and I was terrible at them. So I really wanted to do something, doing something around books, because that was a constant love of my life. So I just landed up in Delhi and started looking for jobs. I had a couple of interviews lined up, and one of them took me. So I stayed.
Just one more question here.
Okay, since I'm the last person, I'll take the liberty of combining two questions I had. So congrats, Milan, on the book. Great to see it out.
Thank you, thank you.
Since this is about heartbreak, I wanted to know, was there any lie about heartbreak that you have dismantled or attempted to dismantle in the book? Because, in today's dating world, ghosting, gaslighting, situationships have all become common. Modern love is complicated. Also, since these are real stories, I wanted to know how you balance creativity and protecting people's identity and dignity.
I think we'll have to wrap up quickly.
So about dismantling lies, I think for me, the eye opener. In fact, just as we were coming out for this session, I met an author, and you know how we're all sort of exchanging notes on what's your book about, and I said heartbreak. He said, so it's for all the women. So no, heartbreak is for everybody. Heartbreak has happened to everybody. Almost, I think you'd be really a very, very rare person on earth who has never experienced heartbreak. And if I could expand the scope of it, I mean, this book is about relationship-based heartbreak, but we've all faced heartbreaks of losing friendships, that somebody just went cold on you, or losing pets, losing family members. And I think that that is the first lie. I'd say that I think it touches everybody, every single person. And the thing is, when I write the book, I'm not concerned about the other person. We know for a fact that the truth is not just the side of the person who's telling the story. Yeah? But right now, this book is for that person who has had a heartbreak. And there was a second part to your question, quickly.
I think you can ask Milan that when you get your book signed, maybe. That would be best. Thank you all so much for being here. I hope you've enjoyed the panel as much as we've enjoyed being on it. Thank you all for offering all your different perspectives. It's been lovely.
Thank you, Aishwarya.
Another round
Thank
of applause for the wonderful panelists on stage.